Scooptober? Scooby-Topia! Hey, welcome to the start of Scooptober on Scooby-Topia. While it may come as a shock to some, there is a small handful of direct-to-video Scooby movies I've yet to see, and it is, after all, the season of Scooby. So what better way to spend some of these special Halloween episodes on the channel than to watch them together? Let's get the obvious out of the way, it's in the title. We're going to look at the WWE crossover movies today, and for fun, check out another couple of TV episodes with some ghoulish wrestlers going up against Scooby as well. First of all, these two movies aren't the only time Hanna-Barbera characters have crossed over with the WWE during this unusual period of time, as two other classic HB series that normally don't get direct-to-video films from Warner Animation were also gifted a couple of these in whatever wacky deal was going on. The first actually followed in the footsteps of Scooby with the 2015 film The Flintstones and WWE Stone Age SmackDown, the final film starring the late great Russie Taylor before she passed away. As I avoided all four of these films, not being a fan of wrestling, I've not seen this one either, but I've heard decent things about it, I guess, though also pretty mixed. The fourth and final co-production with WWE is one I do have on DVD and hope to watch eventually. 2017's The Jetsons and WWE WrestleMania. Being the first entry in that franchise in a very long time, all of the original voice cast had since passed away, and there are definitely a lot of interesting casting choices that I have words about, but that's a different video. This is the video where I watched two Scooby ones because this is a Scooby channel, and I tell you what I think of them as someone that knows literally nothing about wrestling whatsoever, but too much about Scooby-Doo. I will not be able to tell you a single thing about wrestling, so if there's a little nod to a wrestling thing, I will not know. That's what you are in for. I will not recognize a single person in any of these movies except John Cena. I think he's in one of these. I know him from the Fred movie. Okay, let's get to that first one, which I've heard some pretty good things about. Right, first up is Scooby-Doo WrestleMania Mystery, released March 25th, 2014. One thing I do know about this movie before watching it is it was directed by Brandon Vietti, one of the showrunners of the series Young Justice, and that he snuck in some cameos from the characters in this movie. I happen to be a huge Young Justice fan. That used to be the main fandom I was in online, so I was very aware of this. However, if you're a wrestling fan unlike me, you probably instantly know this is also a tie-in with WWE's WrestleMania, which gave it a larger than average push, even getting specific action figures, and gave it a lot of commercial success. For me, however, as I've alluded to before, this start of frequent crossovers with celebrities or popular characters for the movies was when I started to lose interest and stop following the movies so closely for a while. I missed out on some beef though apparently, as this is the first of the movies to be rated PG when airing on TV due to the violence from the wrestling. It also gets retitled the WWE Mystery more generically due to copyright reasons when airing on TV. One funny thing I saw on IMDb was Grey Delisle Griffin, who of course voices Daphne, apparently said in an interview that the WWE wrestlers in this were not especially talented at voiceover, which is pretty funny. Anyway, I suppose I've edged us enough. I need to actually watch the movie for the first time now. I really kind of don't want to. I've avoided it for an entire decade, but I'll be strong. The movie starts off with this big guy Kane walking up to WWE City, and someone apparently named The Miz, and not John Cena apparently, is on a nightly little run here. Surprised to see him. I can guess Kane has bad blood with the WWE by his reaction, and The Miz has a silly little celebratory moment thinking he scared him off. With suspicious timing, this bear creature runs out of the woods at him. The Miz makes a Yogi Bear reference, and Yogi slaps the shit out of him until his clothes fly off to give us fan service.
Really?
I'll still always choose the bear. So let's get this straight. The Miz is topped by a bear, hovering over his large chest, growling, before we get our opening credits. They give us a bunch of screenshots and clips of the classic Where Are You show, which is kind of weird, I don't know if it works. And it's equally weird to include live action footage of the wrestlers. Like, both of these feel equally out of place if that makes sense. I don't know if I like the song either, it's a bit annoying and loud, but I suspect that's on purpose.
You can't see me! You can't see me at all!
I'm a little distracted by Shaggy also having detailed nipples for once, but Scooby's also ready to join in as these two are suddenly big wrestling buffs. They end up beating the game like nobody else, and Vince McMahon gives them a trip to WWE City as a big prize. They tell the gang about going to WrestleMania at the Burger Bench, but they aren't into it, so Shaggy pulls out his receipts of all the things he and Scoob didn't want to do, but did.
Scooby-Doo almost got milked!
It was so humiliating.
Fred and Velma succumb, thinking of the nerd things they can do at least, while Daphne's guilt finally kicks in. On the road, Daphne gets pissed when she realizes Shaggy didn't pack any luggage, just snacks.
Like, what's the big deal? We all wear the same outfits every single day anyway.
Meanwhile, we get one of our early moments of Fred's modern catchphrase.
Hold the phone!
They end up wrecking the van to avoid a raccoon, where they encounter some men including one of the coaches named Cookie and John Cena.
What's he gonna do? Lift the van out of the ditch?
this is also how my mind works. The raccoon steals some Scooby snacks, so Scoop chases it off into the woods, followed by the others where they run into Bayard, who isn't keen to have trespassers in his woods, making what could be taken as a threat. John offers VIP tickets as an apology, and the boys happily enjoy watching the show. Daphne also seems to very much enjoy watching John, to Fred's annoyance. If we are being truthful, as soon as the wrestling started here, I got so bored immediately that I paused the movie and left the room and forgot about it for over an hour. Mr. McMahon comes out to give us the exposition that the championship belt has remained vacant since Kane's was overturned, and that this WrestleMania event will be to crown a new champion. Fred gets even more jealous when Daph reveals John texted her personally after getting her number earlier. Next, they're offered to visit the WWE training camp, where they see many of the real wrestlers, and Cookie sees his nephew Ruben training, though he seems to have mixed thoughts on it, so he gets the gang to their cabins.
Now all I have are these 2 scarves. Which do you think John would like better?
Seriously?
Seriously, be honest.
The one on the right.
My thoughts exactly.
The girls overhear Ruben fighting with Cookie about not helping him get into WWE, Cookie pointing to his leg brace, showing his concern that Ruben could get hurt like he did. It seems he really cares about his nephew, but Ruben wants this. Scooby meanwhile has a vivid dream, and woken up by Shaggy, finds himself biting into the bear. It chases them through buildings, disturbing The Miz, when all the WWE stars run out to fight it. Sadly, it throws Sin Cara's car, crashing into a blazing fire as it vanishes. Cookie reveals this means the legend of the ghost bear coming back to challenge them must be true, and as Fred confirms a mystery, Kane spies from the forest angrily. Miss Richards is not happy with what's going on, revealing even more attacks have been happening, like in the game studio. Mr. McMahon enters, hoping Mystery Incorporated, being mystery solvers, can help stop this, and protect the championship belt especially. Miss Richards is annoyed when he insists they stay despite her assurance it's safe, and Daphne gleefully accepts John's help. He interprets the ghost bear's backstory from Sin Cara, explaining the bear named Vicious was part of a traveling show 100 years ago. The bear had never been beaten in the ring until Sin Cara Grande, his great-great-great-grandfather. The bear angrily set the town ablaze in the wake of his defeat, only stopped by Sin Cara Grande, though he was injured and could never wrestle again, while the bear escaped into the woods forever until now. Sin Cara believes he's come back for his revenge, but he's ready to stand and fight like his relative. Fred locks his door on the way out to keep Scooby from leaving in his dreams again, but he still rises from bed and sees unusual lights outside in a trance. Shaggy opens the door in the morning to Miss Richards and security saying the belt was stolen, placing blame on Scooby, who finds the belt on himself to his shock. The gang defend him, but she shows the footage of Scooby impossibly evading all the security measures and putting in the exact password combination, as everyone looks at him with disappointment. Cookie confirms the belt is real, and Miss Richards has Scoob taken into custody, but Velma has an epiphany and runs out so they can work to save him. She shows Miss Richards and the others that slowing down his movements, it's the same as the dance he was doing earlier that Velma has footage of for some unknown reason, and that he was hypnotically programmed to steal the belt. Ruben, using his tech background his uncle wants him to pursue, reveals lights that flash in the actual game with every move, planting the suggestion in his brain. Miss Richards says he's still going to jail, and Shaggy is going with him since it was his game, making him the accomplice. Mr. McMahon offers the law that anyone who is accused of a crime in WWE City can compete for their freedom, but the only person left that they can fight is none other than Kane, and he's dead set on getting the belt back. The boys do not want this, but Velma accepts for them, and so their match will now go forward if they can't prove their innocence. She tells the boys they need to buy time to prove it, so they beg Cookie to help train them, along with help from AJ Lee. We spend some time, of course, on a training montage from there, while Ruben is hurt seeing his uncle train them while refusing him when this has been his dream. Velma finally has some clues, so they head out to search. Velma believing the bear to be connected to this, as Bayard watches from above, sending rocks down upon them. They're only saved by John jumping in, who came because Daphne texted him, upsetting Fred, but they continue on. They find and head inside Bear Cave, eventually finding what they assume to be the ghost bear's lair, full of things a bear probably wouldn't know how to use. Daphne finds books on hypnosis, evidence to help the boys. John finds schematics for an EMP, and Velma discovers a calendar that circled WrestleMania in red saying RIP.
So someone thinks they're gonna knock the lights out on WrestleMania? Not on my watch!
Fred stuns the ghost bear with his camera flash, and the gang run off, inciting a chase through the cave, just to end up back where they started as John's out cold. Fred sets off some of the equipment, leading the cave to flood and wash everyone away, and the bear destroys Fred's evidence photos as they come to the edge of the waterfall. John wakes up, however, grabs the bear and tosses it away from them, which Daphne lovingly films. Safe, they spot a way out and end up coming up in the middle of the training camp in WWE City, showing the bear has full access. With John as their witness, they explain to Miss Richards and the rest, and everyone wants to cancel cancel, but she refuses to shut down the event, promising extra security. Fred decides it's time for a trap, and John's all in, while Bayard watches from outside of the event. Cookie tries to give the boys a pep talk, but the sight of Kane kills it, so Ruben wishes them luck. Watching at home, meanwhile, is the little treat for me. Cassie, Artemis, Zatanna, and McGann from Young Justice watching at home. Fred checks to ensure everyone's in position, and looking over to the belt, Velma realizes where the EMP is. While the boys fight Kane, she rushes over to Miss Richards, ushering her to check the belt, and Sin Cara arrives with a magnet to prove it. It easily sticks to the belt, proving it to be fake, and turning it over, they find the EMP is about to go off. Realizing the power generator is right below them, Miss Richards runs off to warn everyone while John hands the fake belt to Shaggy, trying to launch it into the air. But bouncing off Scooby kills this plan, and the power shuts off everywhere. Also, so weird to hear Daphne's voice come out as Zatanna.
Oh man, this is awful.
The bear shows up to wreak havoc, so they initiate Plan B, fighting the area the old school way. Shaggy tells Scooby to pretend he's playing the video game he knows all the moves to and starts easily winning against Kane, while the bear makes his way in, and Triple H gets the generators going just as the lights go out again. They initiate Plan C next, locking in the bear with Ruben, now in his homemade costume, as they start fighting. Both of them get catapulted into the ring, and John and Sin Cara join as it becomes a cage match. Together, the two successfully take it down, until it gets back up again. So Scooby wakes up Kane, who takes him down as the others join in to pile on, leaving it up to Scoob. He flies down, the cage explodes, the bear is out, and Scooby wins. Velma finally enjoying wrestling for what it is. Fred unmasks the bear, revealing Cookie, as they explain he never got the spotlight and his injury permanently took WWE away from him, and he grew resentment over the years while training others to be what he couldn't. He hacked the video game to add the hypnosis and get a pawn, setting everything up and then attacking the game studio to cover his tracks. Securing the best pawn from the contest, he used the hypnosis programmed to frame Scooby with the belt he switched out, leaving him free to ruin the reputation of WWE in the chaos tonight. As for the real belt, Cookie has it on himself, John taking it back and holding it up for everyone. Despite Cookie being taken away, Ruben is accepted as one of them now after his brave actions especially, and Mr. McMahon offers him a home here however he wants it. The big man then offers the belt to the real champions, Shaggy and Scooby, Kane even offering a friendly shake, and everyone celebrates them.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
And so, after like 7 or 8 hours, I finally finished the movie. Yes, it really took me that long because I kept pausing it, which isn't to say I didn't like it. My attention span just isn't meant for wrestling. However, I will say I was valid for putting it off for so long because that's the exact thing I was expecting to happen. The movie itself, it's fine. It's at least a 3 out of 5 stars kind of movie. I felt a little lost at times, but not too lost when it came to the WWE stuff. The Ghost Bear isn't the most exciting villain, but I suppose that's fine because you're really supposed to be pulled in by the wrestling stars in this one, so you really don't want the villain to outshine them, I guess. The mystery is kind of easy to figure out, but again, if you're watching this movie, you're probably watching it for the wrestling stars. The mystery kind of only matters enough that it's there. Cookie could have been a much more sympathetic villain. I was surprised they didn't make any of his backstory about truly wanting to actually protect his nephew Ruben, and maybe scare him out of it, which is what I thought was going on at first. I could have seen that being as much of a motivation as his resentment mixed together, which would have made him a lot more complicated and interesting. Bayard, meanwhile, doesn't really have any payoff as a secondary antagonist, because he just completely disappears after the climax really kicks in, and never really has much to do at all after he watches them go into the cave. I guess there's not much resolution to that part of the story you could give, but I felt like it was just left pretty unfinished. Likewise, Daphne's crush on John doesn't really go anywhere outside of being a running joke to annoy Fred, but I do feel like it doesn't have that much payoff since we didn't address why Fred is annoyed by it or have any real acknowledgement of that even from John, especially considering the previous movie's stage fright heavily focused on the romantic relationship of Fred and Daphne. I don't know how much I buy Shaggy and Scooby being into wrestling this much or even video games to this exact degree, but I guess it's not out of the question for reasons we'll get into later. Velma probably has the most actual payoff after them, considering she spends the movie trying to figure out how to view wrestling scientifically before she finally gives in and just enjoys it. While on her, it's always great to hear Mindy Cohn as Velma. I still miss her so much, so it's nice to still have a couple more movies I haven't seen with her. The voice acting from the WWE stars wasn't all that atrocious, definitely serviceable for what they needed to do. Sin Cara probably had the easiest job considering I'm assuming he got paid to basically not be in the movie and have no lines. The animation is pretty standard, which is to say good for this era of the movies. It basically looks the same as all of them. Nothing about the movie really stands out as particularly memorable or special outside the gimmick of the stars. This is also one of the only movies from this period of time to have real bonus features, along with the sequel and the Kiss movie, but it's pretty much just focused on the behind the scenes with the wrestlers. That's probably really fun for people that care about them though. When it wasn't focused on wrestling, I did really enjoy the movie. It has a lot of good comedy comedy in it, and the wrestling is probably even better for people that actually know these guys or find that fun, so I can see why some people would enjoy this, while some people would also take 8 hours to finish it. Glad I saw it to finish off watching these. Not sure that I'll ever really visit it again anytime soon, though. It's truly not a bad movie, as much as I feel unsatisfied by a few plot threads. I just don't think it's for me. I kind of think that's all I have to really say about it. I wish I could contribute more to the discussion of the WWE aspect. I guess we should just move on to the sequel. After the success of the first WWE Scooby movie, they unsurprisingly greenlit a sequel, released on Blu-ray and DVD August 9th, 2016, just a little over 2 years later. Scooby-Doo and WWE Curse of the Speed Demon would notably be the first time Kate Micucci is replacing Mindy Cohn in the DTV movies from here on, after Mindy had previously been promised to still voice Velma in these at least while battling cancer, which turned out to be a lie. The sequel also carries a dedication to Dusty Rhodes, who passed away the year prior, having already finished recording his part for the film in a pivotal role. Notable prior stars like Mr. McMahon, The Miz, and Triple H returned in this direct continuation, but John unfortunately is not back, The Undertaker instead taking his focused spotlight. Hulk Hogan was apparently meant to be prominently featured, having been announced early on, but following his termination from WWE in 2015 because of being a raging racist, he was struck from the film entirely. Tim Navar took over directing for this one instead of Brandon Vietti, having previously storyboarded on the Scooby movies Samurai Sword and Music of the Vampire, along with directing episodes of Vietti's series Young Justice, while Vietti did remain as a producer. With all of that being said, let's see if this one can keep my focus any better with the change in scenery. This movie actually drops us immediately into the credits without setup, but I do like this one more. The song isn't as obnoxious, and they don't mix visual styles with the classic series and live action footage. Everything stays consistent, though it does feel a bit weird and not like a proper movie. It just remains a bit lazy compared to how dynamite some of the opening credits for these movies can be. The announcer then lets us know we're leaving to a new location to mix it up with WWE's Masamoto X Off-Road Challenge. The boys are here running a food truck while watching the race live, Fred meanwhile geeking out about the cars to the girls. Mr. McMahon reveals his daughter Stephanie came up with the race idea, lasting over 3 days with 3 races, though he says she has no time for racing with husband Triple H with how busy she is at WWE. Cut to her driving the truck with him as a passenger princess, upsetting Dad.
Did you know the Legend Mobile has a 7.0-liter engine that puts out 600 horsepower and can do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds? Uh-oh, I'm becoming a gearhead. This could cut into my trap studies.
I know it's said often, but it's still amazing how youthful Frank Welker comes off performing as Fred. The boys are in full cosplay to see The Undertaker with Dusty, but as the duo ride out, an explosion lets loose a new car on the track chasing them, and the driver appears pretty ghastly. It wrecks the Legend Mobile and pops out to say the curse of Inferno is upon them, warning to end the race or suffer. Dusty tries to fight the creep, but gets tossed, and the thing rides away while The Undertaker vows revenge. Dusty is out of commission for a while. The Undertaker is pissed, and The Miz remains unbothered. Mr. McMahon asks the gang to help again, and against Shaggy's wishes, Fred shakes on the promise to solve another mystery. While checking out the tire tracks, Velma uncovers the demon has appeared before, where in the 1930s, one ruthless driver didn't realize the edge of Dead Man's Curve had washed away until it was too late, flying off to his explosive death. And it's said to this day you can see him, cursed to haunt any race on the mountain. Fred sniffs the soil with a silly, grossed out reaction.
Sniff?
Really, Fred?
Which Velma recognizes as sulfur, aka brimstone, a natural chemical in many smoke effects. Producer Walter Qualls loves the supernatural with the drama it brings, asking the gang to snoop less, but the gang push back. They head down to talk to the superstars, where the Undertaker acknowledges the boys for defeating the Ghost Bear before, while the others reunite with Triple H and meet Stephanie. She calls out Daphne's iconic shoes, specifically as being Takemoto's, which may or may not be a reference to original iconic Scooby character designer Iwao Takamoto. Mr. McMahon interrupts, telling Stephanie she's out because she's doing too much and it's not safe. And with a look at Scoob, Triple H suddenly isn't a fan of dogs. Meanwhile, Dusty warns the producer is never going to care no matter the danger and walks out, making him sus to Daphne. As the Undertaker explains, he wanted the prize money for his family. Stephanie is equally sus as she recommends Scooby and Shaggy partner with the Undertaker so he can remain in the race, which makes them equally frightened yet joyful. And so begins the fight of Team Taker. Big Earl is disappointed he's having to pay $300 for just a textbook for his kids when Taker introduces him to the gang, being the one to customize all the cars. Unfortunately, Taker's car doesn't have much left after the accident, but Fred offers to help fix it, while Taker notices some unusual powder all over Earl. Velma notes it's not brimstone, but talcum powder, which Earl says is from replacing airbags. Daphne then overhears manicures from Stephanie, and decides to ditch everyone to go have some spa time. We get a montage from here as Fred joins the team to see what they can do to fix up the car for Team Taker, and the next day, as everyone joins including the very pretty Miz, we finally see the new car, the Scoobinator.
Did we? Dropped it hot.
Fred passes out before he can say what to press for more speed, and by this point I realized my equal distaste in racing has caused a problem here, because once again I paused the movie and forgot for a couple of hours to come back to it. The race kicks off and this movie basically turns into Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf 2.0, which I have equal trouble watching once it becomes wacky races like this.
You know what you need? Mentoring.
Expectedly, the ghoulish car makes another appearance on the track, jumping out to curse everyone and set the entire bridge on fire.
I'm too young to fry!
The drones above, meanwhile, won't get near the ghost car, somehow interfering with the signal of those and the jammers. As Stephanie is being attacked, Daphne and Velma notice the weird absence of her father, Mr. McMahon, this whole time. Taker realizes what Fred was trying to say just in time to make a daring jump across the collapsing bridge, catching up to the Inferno ghost who vanishes. With Triple H and Stephanie in first place, Team Taker manages to make it to second place after all the chaos. During the interviews later that night, I loved the little tights and flamboyancy the Miz displays here. Maybe he's become best boy after his beatdown in the last movie. Everything erupts into chaos again, and the louder stars start complaining to Mr. McMahon, who finally shows up, asking him for new partners. So with some urging by the producer who likes the ratings today, he switches them up, while Dusty warns the curse of the demon is only starting. Daphne, meanwhile, has plans to talk to Stephanie about working for WWE as a WrestleWear designer, while Velma remains skeptical.
She even said nice things about you. She thought you'd make a great superstar. She said you're just the type fans love to see get slammed.
Having stuck out for a snack, the boys hear a sound and see Inferno outside, who starts chasing the boys until the Miz jumps out on another jog and decks him, deciding it's time to make up for the last time he got into a fight like this. Compared to before, he puts up an amazing fight and holds his own, so Inferno cheats and starts misting, throwing the Miz away and giving another warning before vanishing in the mist again. Earl only finds the company car's oil line being cut by the ghost, which would have seized up the engine during the race. They find another spot of talcum powder, which Triple H immediately says is from him checking their airbags, and they see the ghost left a track in it. Mr. McMahon tries to get Stephanie to drop out again, but she defiantly says she's driving tomorrow, which he doesn't seem happy about, watched by Dusty. As the next day's race starts, someone notices Mr. McMahon oddly leaving, and while the girl power team-up seems to be having trouble, Inferno reappears, setting his sights on the company car, so Triple H jumps out to fight him one-on-one. As things look bad, Taker rams Inferno, and the two cars end up going the wrong way to finish the race, Inferno giving a fatal blow to the Scoobinator headed for a waterfall. The company car makes it through first place again, but Team Taker remains in danger until the food comes in handy, leaving the car to crash to its doom, shocking everyone until they see the guys made it, saved by sausage links. That night, Taker is disappointed he won't be able to win and use the money to do something special for his younger fans, while Stephanie and Triple H get a quiet reception to their boasting, met with accusations of favoritism in whatever is going on here, everyone agreeing on how convenient it is that the demon showed up both times they won. Fred meanwhile asks Mr. McMahon where he's been off to, but he runs off without answering despite knowing it seems sus. Daphne heads out to Stephanie, telling her she knows what it's like to be in the shadow of a rich father, and she expresses to Daph how much harder she has to work to actually get her dad to acknowledge her at all. But while Daphne tries to relate, Stephanie rudely tells her there's a difference between millions and billions and walks off, overseen by Dusty. Thelma continues to not like what she's seeing from Stephanie after hearing this and warns Daph she might get betrayed.
She's not my best friend. You are.
Good, because if we're gonna solve this mystery, there's no one I'd rather solve it with than you.
The boys are thankful they can finally rest when they hear an engine rev, and outside, the mystery machine has been transformed. Team Taker now back in the race after a little upgrade. All of them join the race the next day, Thelma pointing out the important clue about the drones continuing to stop working when crossed with some signal coming from the ghost rig, suggesting the car is being driven by remote control at times. So now they'll try overriding the ghost signal. Of course, the spook jumps onto the track as the final race begins, smashing the van and throwing the control from Fred's hands as they also lose their parachute, making it too dangerous to go near Deadman's cave. Team Russia abandon their previous team-ups to rejoin and fight the ghost, just to get knocked over. The Miz getting thrown out and rejoining Paige. After this, the superstars decide to all team up and go after the ghost, most of them eventually being taken out as Team Taker catches up. Fred starts using the control successfully, so the ghost gets back in, and the control gets crushed. Taker has the boys take over driving, Shaggy protesting about never having driven before despite having done so in the last several movies and many TV episodes, while Taker himself gets out, jumping on the ghost's hood where it gets out to join him. With a new plan, the boys just have to stay on track for Deadman's Curve, and thankfully the track is identical to the themed pretzels they've been devouring forever, so their eating finally comes in handy. They hit the curve, the ghost rig flying off and inflating its parachute, while Fred tells the boys not to stop, revealing he can tether them to the rig and safely make it after all. The two vehicles meanwhile end up passing the company car that had already made it this far, leaving them to fall behind while Taker and Inferno continue to fight. The ghost escapes to the van as they reach land again, the mystery machine coming in first as Shaggy stops the van to throw the ghost across the track. The Undertaker comes in second, running over to continue the fight, giving Old Gruesome one last move to finish him off finally. Mr. McMahon and the others present to see this solved, Fred prepares to unmask Inferno, revealing Triple H. Velma explains they suspected the ghost to be one of the superstars when he was able to break free of the Miz earlier, but Daphne calls out Stephanie as the real brain behind this. Velma then reveals an inflatable Triple H dummy that made it appear he was still in the car during the attacks. Stephanie driving both cars when needed using remote control in the passenger seat, and switching roles in the second race to escape any suspicion. The night their oil line got cut, Triple H was actually switching his dummy for the Stephanie dummy for that second race, hence the talcum powder from messing with the airbags he hid them in, cutting the oil line to throw everyone off.
My plan would have worked too, if it weren't for you meddling kids and your speedster dog!
Daphne asks Mr. McMahon about his own disappearances, revealing he was practicing to sing the national anthem tonight. Asking his daughter why she did this, she wanted to make her event a success and prove to him that she could do everything, and he says he already knew she could. He just didn't want her hurt. The emotional moment is short-lived though, as he still hands her over to the police with her husband. With a beautiful national anthem performance, The Undertaker gets to use his prize money for his fans after all, while the boys donate their share to Dusty and his American dream. A fitting happy end considering Dusty sadly didn't live long enough to see the release of the film. The Undertaker makes this moment about honoring everyone to close it out.
Scooby-Doo!
And that's the curse of the Speed Demon, completing my contract to watch both WWE movies after I've avoided it so long. So how was this one? Well, first, I didn't take 8 hours to finish this one. Only 5 this time! Combining wrestling with my other weakness, racing, really did a number on this one. I will say this one held my attention better than the first movie, though it's not necessarily without its flaws. I don't think I have as many complaints though. Earl comes off as a better red herring since he doesn't really come off as having more to do in contrast to Bayard. He is used pretty appropriately, and Stephanie has the right amount of motivation and setup as a villain. She wants to win, but she wants to also prove herself to her father. I don't feel like she's lacking anything as the primary antagonist, so I would actually say this movie is a little bit stronger for me in that regard. The Miz is also very enjoyable in his second chance to show off here. They gave him a lot more fun characterization. I like the little arc of Velma being jealous and worried for Daphne, and the moment they share as well, and Fred getting to show off his special interest powers when working on the cars. I think they got used more evenly this time too. The Undertaker also feels like he has a lot more to do in the story, a lot more purpose to be here, compared to John in the first movie, and I would say most of the superstars feel a lot more like proper characters this time instead of random celebrities. It might be controversial, but I think this one might actually be more enjoyable and solid as a movie of the two for me. If I was going to watch one a second time, I would probably choose this one. Kate Micucci as Velma also isn't as hard to stomach as it probably would have been upon first release for me, since I've gotten used to her in the role over time, but I still very much miss Mindy Cohn as Velma. I don't have all that much to say about it again, and I'm missing out on all the little references to wrestling and our celebrity guests, but it's probably another solid 3 out of 5 stars movie. Definitely not one of the best, probably not one I will watch again soon, but the mystery and motivations make decent sense, and the gang aren't horrifically wasted. Everything about the movie, from the animation to the acting and the music, remains pretty consistent with the first movie. Like the first though, you're probably not going to get as much out of this one if you don't care about the WWE stars. Both of these feel like you're really missing out more than usual when it comes to crossovers in Scooby-Doo. I don't think I was keeping myself from integral Scooby content by staying away from these for so long. I'm definitely not a fan in love with them. Glad I saw them, but I've seen better Scooby fare. I suppose that wraps up everything I have to talk about when it comes to the second movie. But since it's a special holiday time for Scoobtober, we don't have to say goodbye just yet. These weren't the only times Scooby came face to face with wrestlers. Let's have a little extra fun before we go. On October 6, 1990, what's considered the third and final episode of Season 3, Episode 24 overall of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo was aired. This episode, titled Wrestle Maniacs, is even included as a bonus feature on the Blu-ray for WrestleMania Mystery. So let's take a look. The gang are gathered to watch some wrestling with the boys dressed as their favorite heroes, Commander Cool and Mellow Mutt. To Daphne's surprise, Velma is extremely into wrestling as well, contradicting her disinterest and scientific curiosity in WrestleMania Mystery. Carol Colossal and Barbara Simone are back from the Return of Commander Cool episode. Barbara out of prison on a release work permit. Their fun is interrupted though when the cow ghost, voiced by Jim Cummings, appears in the ring, only stopped with some barbecue sauce. One of the wrestlers taken out by him, voiced also by Jim Cummings, says the hooded heifer used to be one of the strongest wrestlers until he was kicked out and swore revenge. Interesting name, since a heifer is a lady cow that hasn't given birth. The guy hightails it out of there, dropping a remote in the process. Scooby's nose eventually finds a new clue, a canceled check, when they're interrupted by the self-proclaimed biggest wrestling fan who wanted to be a wrestler himself, now joining a rival to get revenge for being rejected here. later, they check the rival place out, where the boys unfortunately run into the heifer again, so they run off and join the gang to meet the bosses. They aren't doing too hot, but are grateful to still have one wrestler, and also accountant left, who then throws them out right back into the hands of the heifer. Scooby dances him away, a letter flying out with a hoof print, so they go to question who wrote it. He says it was a letter to his mom, the meanest old lady wrestler around, who shows up to punish him. They ask Carol for more info on him, and make a plan to try and catch him, just to run into the heifer again. They get into a musical chase sequence typical for Pup, but Scooby scares him off and Velma gets an idea from the light stick she finds on him. They lure him back out so he'll get into the ring with Scooby, and he's eventually able to get this mystery all tied up. They all go over who they think did it, Red Herring even offering to say he did it for once if Fred beats him, which he, of course, doesn't. Velma, however, reveals he's the guy from earlier who dropped the remote, which he used to set off the explosion, and his signature that was on that check matched the writing on the envelope with the letter. The light stick he owned was the final clue she needed. He was upset Miss Colossal bought the place before him and wanted to scare everyone off so he could get it cheap. With great seats, the boys get to enjoy their thanks from Miss Colossal for saving things.
A pup named
Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
I like Pup Named Scooby-Doo, but it's not my favorite Scooby series despite growing up with it, and this episode falls into how childish it can be. One of many reasons I don't resonate with it as much. It's still a decent episode though, with a lot of red herrings. Least of all Red himself. Especially with a short runtime, it definitely holds my attention more than the movies did, so that's something. Definitely better episodes of the show out there though. Most people seem to agree the show had lost a bit of its weight this late into it. We have another episode we have to look at though before we're done. On February 12th, 2005, Season 4, Episode 5, the 32nd overall of What's New Scooby-Doo aired. It just so happens to be titled Wrestle Maniacs. So, real creative, the same pun on WrestleMania that a pup already used. The episode was meant to be included on the WrestleMania Mystery Blu-ray as well, but didn't make the final cut for some reason. But it was included on the 50th Anniversary Best of DVD in 2019. Let's get into this one. We're welcomed to the Wrestling Bowl owned by Broderick Bocephus, voiced by Jim Cummings, who appeared in the last episode as the heifer. He has some of his wrestlers show off the expensive showpieces he's built, but waiting in the wings is a messed up meanie who flies into action and takes them all out while laughing. The gang meanwhile arrive to the bowl, Fred being the big enthusiast this time, who recognizes Sparrow Man, one of his favorite wrestlers that currently is injured and ready to quit after the attack, two of the others saying there wouldn't be trouble if they were the stars instead. Sparrow Man reveals the attacker was Titanic Twist, named for a move so dangerous it was outlawed after the only time it was used. The wrestler it was used on was horrifically contorted and now seeks revenge, and that aspect of this one always made this episode stick out to me as a kid as extra real and scary in contrast to your average ghost or monster villain. Bocephus refuses to cancel, but his stars are walking. But luckily Fred carries a wrestling outfit everywhere just in case, apparently. In the ring he meets Malachi Crunch, whose kids are worried for the safety of after he said he would retire, having already won the belt. But then the gang see the Titanic Twist himself, who jumps into the ring and abducts a wrestler.
like it had two arms on one side of his body.
He could never buy a shirt off the rack.
Hunky Fred determines we've got a mystery, and boy is he really good looking, boobs out and all. Out looking for clues, the boys immediately run into the Titanic Twist while the girls run into a scary looking guy who Fred identifies as former champ Humongous Hammer, who had to retire after a nasty looking injury to his knee. He seems pretty resentful being rewarded for his years here by being made to sell candy. Checking out the trailer the Twist just left, Shaggy sprays some whipped cream that ends up spewing some mist that causes him to pass out instead, while the Twist lifts up the trailer and sends it rolling. Scooby manages to save them, but starts sliding further, crashing in front of the others. Velma identifies the can Shaggy had as Sleeping Mist, wondering why it was in the trailer that turns out to belong to Malachi Crunch. They head to the Wrestling Hall of Fame to research him, only for the Twist to show up, but it seems he's only destroying the Malachi Crunch exhibit alone. He then begins a musical chase as they often get into. Hammer comes over to help out, and the kids show their dad Malachi Crunch the danger he's in with the Twist attacking his stuff, but he insists he can handle himself. The girls are sent undercover now as wrestlers, while the guys dress as janitors, finding the abducted wrestler. Elsewhere, the wrestlers from before doubt Daphne and Velma, so they force them into the ring to prove they're wrestlers, and have to put their best traits into action to survive together. The Twist appears again and starts chasing the guys meanwhile, and after a struggle downward, he escapes with Fred in his arms. Bocephus kicks them out, so they search for their lost friend. The boys eating their way to a very asleep Fred and very scary Twist, but as the girls think it must be Hammer, he saves them from getting run over. He admits he'd love to terrorize Bocephus, but can't with his knee. Such is life for older wrestlers, which clicks things into place for Velma. While hiding, the boys don costumes so the Twist won't recognize them, but end up being sent into the cage for a match, only for the Twist to pop out and attack anyway. Velma has to improvise with no Fred, tilting and spinning the cage around until the boys fall out, but they still manage to waterlog and capture Mr. Twist just in time for Fred to return. They then unmask the big bad, revealing none other than Malachi's two 2 kids. They wanted to scare their dad out of competing so he wouldn't get hurt like Hammer, hence targeting him to make it seem like he was in danger. The sleep gas was to knock out the wrestlers despite their child size.
And they got away with it, even in spite of you meddling kids.
Their old dad agrees it's time to retire and not continue to put himself at risk for their sake after all. A happy ending for once. Everyone's celebrating the importance of family together.
Scooby-Doo.
And that's also Wrestle Maniacs. Out of the 4 different Scooby wrestling stories in this video, this was probably my favorite and most enjoyable. I always liked this one growing up, and like I said, the added element of the twist being a real person or event that happened, even if it wasn't really him attacking, added a more real and scary element to this episode when I was younger and made it stand out as one of the best. The comedy and red herrings also work really well, and Fred is really fun as well as very attractive in this one. Being a wrestling story also wasn't a deterrent to my enjoyment of it unlike the others. This one just feels very fun and consistently kept my attention easily. What's New always remains fairly solid, and these days perhaps underrated. I also like that the villain this time isn't someone truly despicable trying to hurt anyone, but just 2 kids that care about their dad and want him to realize being there for them is more important than risking his life. It's a take we don't often see as much in Scooby and makes the already fairly fresh episode even more so. It's also basically what I wanted to see from Cookie in WrestleMania Mystery. I suppose I don't have much else to say about it, so we should prepare to depart. Well, that's the mega video about Scooby-Doo and a bunch of wrestlers, from the WWE to a freaky cow or a twisted menace. With my lack of knowledge and interest in wrestling, it very well may be the worst video on the channel, and probably the worst video and set of opinions on these particular films. Who can really say? A lot of people probably. I feel like I know slightly more now, and yet even less. I'll probably at least recognize the names of a couple of people now though. Again, I don't really think I was missing out on much by putting these off for a decade. They aren't going to be on a list of favorites for me, and I will probably not rewatch them anytime soon, but I'm glad I finally checked off 2 more of the 4 movies I still haven't seen yet. Stick around for more Scooptober though, because we're going to be looking at the other 2 I still haven't seen yet and find out if I should have been loving those all along. And that's not all we're doing this month. Stick around for the whole holiday to also look at more of the most highly requested, and I mean the absolute most requested, scariest villains of Scooby-Doo, and all kinds of fun celebration in this limited time event and return to the channel before it's over. But before that, what do you think of the Scooby-Doo WWE crossover movies? Or the 2 wrestling episodes we looked at here? How do they rank for you? Let me know. Anyway, if you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss the rest of the celebration, check out the Tumblr page if you want, or TikTok if you're not watching this there, etc. Stay tuned for more Scooptober. Bye!